Okay, I'm going to show how I use Packer to create an Ubuntu image on VirtualBox to be used to install a lamp stack onto it. So first, you go up here and go to packer.io and you download Packer. If you're on Linux, you could just use normal apt-get or whatever distribution you're using or whatever package manager you're using. But for Windows, I'm running Windows, so I just downloaded it this way. After you download it, you will get one of this little zip file. Inside the zip file, you have packer.exe. If you just have that, you'll be able to use Packer. So with that, I created a little chain of folders just to hold my information. It doesn't have to be anything special. You just kind of create the folders, or you just create a folder to hold whatever, all the contents you want. So this will start empty. And so the first things you need to place are a build.json, a scripts.json, or not JSON, just a scripts folder, sorry, and an HTTP folder. So again, I'm just going to say all this is going to be empty, like you'll be building kind of this. So to start, so the builds.json, this can be found online. And also I'm going to include this with like the package that I'll put up. It kind of has everything I made. A lot of this I found online. It's just a template and I've altered. So just kind of quickly explain what it is. So variables are just like some general variables you can have throughout the whole file. The only things I put in here are username and password for connecting to the machine, and then what the host name is, and then what the domain is going to be. And this is just going to help me connect to it. So the first big part is a builder. So a builder is what defines what Packer is making the virtual machine for. So this is like, it is making a virtual machine for VirtualBox, or it's making it for like Azure or AWS or whatever is hosting your virtual machine. I'm using VirtualBox, so this is going to be how it's set up, but it shouldn't be too much more difficult to find resources online to adjust that. This is where I define it. This is where I say what operating system I'll be running. This is the title I give it because I created a lamp stack with it. I've done some other ones where just testing with it, so this is with it. This is where you define what ISO you're going to install. Right here, you can choose to either give a URL, because I'm pulling it from Ubuntu.com, but you can also give a local address for an ISO that you have. You can also have an array of them, where if you say like ISO URLs, like the little S here, you could input an array of locations where it'll go in order of all the locations for ISOs, and it'll, in order, you choose the first one that works. So if you have a bunch of options and some are kind of sketchy, it'll pick the first one that's working. This is where it'll save the ISO that you're defining up here. This is the define checksum type and value. I pulled that from the website, so you gotta make it match with what your ISO needs. Down here is where you define what type of format it'll be, what your virtual machine will be running. So like you have 1 gig of memory and 1 CPU core, things like that. Down here is how it's going to connect to the virtual machine once it's created using SSH. So this is using the variables from up above. Make sure to have this, because on some templates online it doesn't have this, and I was having issues connecting, so this helped me out a lot. And then this SSH wait timeout is going to be 20 minutes, and this is important because during the process of building, SSHing into the operating system doesn't happen until after the operating system has been installed and like is ready for use. And so that does take at least 10 minutes. So having it for 20 minutes is actually a good amount of time. And then the rest of this is just commands for Ubuntu to know how to install and put different things like keyboard configurations, stuff like that. I didn't change any of this or edit any of this, but it could be useful to change. So this is where domain and host name will be, things like that. And the last part, actually another part. So the pre-seed, so one of the folders that I said to make was the HTTP folder, and inside of that HTTP folder will be the preseed.config, and this is where you get some configuration for your operating system. And I'll get to that in a second, but this is just saying the location of where this is. And the last thing is provisioners, and provisioners are basically scripts running after the operating system has been installed. So I have a couple shell scripts that run. I have an initialization script that I wrote and a LAMP script that I wrote. And kind of like how this works is it says expect to disconnect because the script will run a restart at the end of it. Execute command, which inputs the variable SSH password into the variables for the script. And that is how I'm able to use root access inside of my scripts. And then I have this pause after 120 seconds because in my init.sh, I install the GNOME shell. And so after that's done installing, you need to restart your operating system in order to get it to actually be on there. And so it takes a good amount of time to actually restart and come back online. So I did 120 seconds and it works. You might need to adjust that for more or less, but that works for me. And then after that 120 seconds, it will move on to the next script, execute the same command as before. And then I have some other scripts I was working with, but this is how you would have more than one script run in a batch, where you can say like first script and then the second one, like scripts /test.sh or whatever it would be. And then you can have a list of scripts. The only reason why I'm not doing that now with my setup is because I needed to do this 120 seconds pause after the init script. And so I have it kind of set up this way. Okay, so next to move on. So in the scripts folder, I placed all my different scripts that I've written. So for example, the init.sh, this is where I do like updating, upgrading, installing Git, installing GNOME onto my operating system, and then doing the restart. I put the sleep 30 because I wanted my script to wait 30 seconds while it waits for Ubuntu to actually boot up. Because in the actual process, after it's done creating Ubuntu, there'll be a small amount of time before it actually is in the operating system. And when it's done creating the operating system, where it'll start running the scripts before it's even ready to boot up. So you need to say wait 30 seconds just so it does it at the right time. So once I do that, that's pretty basic. And I have my lamp.sh, and this is where I install the lamp stack. And I use this as a guide. I'll include this inside of the documentation I have. If I do things, just install Apache, MySQL, Golang, PHP, all the associated libraries, and I just go through and set up the lamp stack to work with each other and test everything that works. Yeah, this is pretty self-explanatory. It's just a normal bash file, and then it runs through and works. Any errors you get on the bash file will actually crash the installation of the of the whole virtual machine. So you have to make sure that your thing works or it catches errors and stuff like that. So, and then after that, you need to make the HTTP folder with the preseed.config. This gives you information for your operating system, such as like language, hostname, domain, keyboard layout, time zone, things like that. The main thing that I've edited was what the password and the username will be here. And then you can change that how you need. And so to kind of sum up the main things when you first start is make the build.json, make the scripts folder, and make the HTTP folder. So everything else will either be generated after you run the script or I've created it. Yeah, and so to actually show how it works is, as you can see right here, I'm inside of the directory for my Packer. You can say build JSON, HTTP, scripts, that kind of stuff. And so what you'd want to do, let's see if I can get to it. Nope. Okay. So say Packer because it's installed now. Build.json. And the interesting thing, or not interesting, you can change the name as build.json. You like it could be anything.json. I just had build because it's meant to be built. But so after you run it, it starts working. And it's starting the virtual machine. And now you can see right here, I have a small little install of Ubuntu. Let's scale it up. Here we go. And this is all done automatically. I don't have to hold the keyboard and type anything. All that, you'll just have to believe me. I can't show my hands, but I'm not typing that. Can't type that fast. One thing you have to look out for that I've been having an issue with, but couldn't really figure out how to get rid of. At the end of the Ubuntu installation, there will be a like, do you want to continue, yes or no? Or it's more like, do you want to have this be installed, yes or no, at the end of the installation? And if you don't, if you don't manually confirm it, it'll delete the entire virtual machine and you'll kind of have to rebuild. So make sure at the end of that 10-minute mark when this happens, do it yourself and hit confirm. And then after that step, it'll start running the bash scripts that you've written. But yeah, I'm not going to sit here for 10 minutes to show you guys this, but in the end, it'll bring up a virtual machine that you can edit and do things with. After you close the virtual machine for your first time, after it starts running like this, it'll create the OVA file, or for me, it'll create an OVA file that I have defined in the build.json, specifically right here. And you can use that OVA file to distribute the virtual machine to whoever's using VirtualBox or whatever. But that can be, that's kind of different for if you're using AWS or Azure or whatever you want. The last thing to worry about is during this installation, it just created the output.virtualbox.iso. And this, if this folder exists, it will not, it will not run the build of the Packer build. So you have to make sure this folder is deleted if you're running the build multiple times. But yeah, that's about it. Have fun.